The wacky world of MultimediaJay.
Overclocking is overrated. Get over it. Welcome to the best prestige universe on MultimediaJay.
A lot of folks, unfortunately, did not get the joke that I was trying to prestige Maddox with this, but I screwed up the chroma keying, and so I had to settle for making myself blend into a very colorful background like this. But overclocking is the sort of thing that I've gotten a lot of crap over the years for, because I've never been a big supporter of it, because it's always struck me as exactly the sort of thing that is completely and totally overblown. It's like a nerd rite of passage. People are like, oh yeah, you don't overclock? You're missing out, man. Why, do you always take what everybody says to you as the ultimate truth? I've been called all kinds of names. People say, oh yeah, you're not a real geek, or I'm not a real computer nerd, or whatever. The elitism that I've run into with overclocking over the past 10 plus years has been absolutely nauseating. Yet, as you can tell with these Phenom 2 1090T speeds, I'm actually trying a little bit of overclocking, and it's definitely something that, well, I tried to hit the best of all worlds on. Instead of trying to go for the absolute maximum processing speed possible, I decided to see how high I could go while still retaining the power management features of this processor. So if nothing big was going on, it would drop down to 800 megahertz and cool off a bit and not use as much power, which would mean less heat that's generated, and also the less noise from the fans in the whole 9 yards. So as you can see, I'm bouncing between 800 megahertz and 4 gigahertz. That's because the standard speed for this 1090T is 3.2 with 3.6 turbo. What I decided to do was do 3.6 turbo, or 3.6 normal, to 4 gigahertz turbo. So the old turbo speed is the new normal speed, which is not all, which to some that wouldn't even be considered an overclock because it's factory supported. And then I wanted to hit 4 gigahertz because I heard all the people say, well, 4 gigahertz, yeah, this chip easily hits 4 gigahertz. You can get to 4 gigahertz very, very easily. Well, that's the thing. I knew I could get to 4 gigahertz stable very, very easily, but I wanted to retain the ability for the processor to ramp down when it wasn't being used. So if I switch this over, right now it's in balanced mode, so it's a little jumpier in terms of jumping up the megahertz. If I go over to power save mode, it'll sit at 800 until I start putting some serious stress on the processor, and then it'll finally start ramping up. It's a sizable performance loss, though, to lock it at the lower speeds like this, so I'll keep it on balance mode for now. But it is kind of bouncing around a little too much. However, I've tried some other overclocks that some folks might not make fun of me as much of for, and I've had 4 gigahertz, but it was 4 gigahertz all the time, even when nothing was happening. So, anyways, let's get the settings for this down one last time, because for the upcoming RAM upgrade today, I'm actually going to reset to factory settings, and I want to know what to set them back to. In terms of stability, only this morning, with some fooling around in WoW while trying to crunch a video at the same time, did I finally get World of Warcraft, a game that is a mix of CPU and GPU utilizing. Only this morning did I finally get a crash out of something, or some kind of instability that I don't normally see when playing a video game and crunching video at the same time, and basically running everything full blast. So I want to know if the newer, better RAM will stabilize that. But if I see more instability, I will probably just go down to 3.6 gigahertz being the max speed of everything. Make the turbo frequency the new normal frequency and call it a day, because I know that is officially supported. I was just curious if I could find a way to get 4 gigahertz on at least a few cores here and there, while retaining all the other features of the chip, like the power management and stuff like that. Okay, let's go to the BIOS and get these settings down. And here we are inside the Gigabyte motherboard intelligent tweaker in the award BIOS on this board, circa 2010 or so. Looking at some settings here. The interesting part is I didn't have to shut off the automatic voltage to get this working because it actually bumps things up to the maximum of 1.475 for this chip. So that's another thing I didn't want to do. I did not want to leave the electrical specifications of the chip either. Temperature, yeah, you can keep the temperature under control, but you don't want to overvolt any of these things as well. That's another easy way to cook stuff. So the good news is the automatic voltage controller, the voltage control circuits on the board, actually will not go above the electrical maximum for the chip. Your stability will just go out the door instead. But, I don't want to be overvolting the chip anyways, because I don't feel like cooking it. Maybe a 5-plus-year-old processor, but I'm not really into frying chips every other year or things along those lines. So ultimately, we have the ratio up to 18 to do 3.6 stock, which is officially supported because that's the turbo frequency. The North Bridge went up to 2400 for an additional performance bump. The catch with that is that I had to keep the Hyper Transport closer to it. However, for stability's sake, I might drop that down closer to 2 GHz or set it back to automatic mode and let the board decide, which should probably drop it down anyways. Core Performance Boost, which goes on up to 3 cores, is enabled with a speed of 4 GHz. On the turbo for that. It does go up to 1.475 whenever it goes up to 4 GHz. The interesting part with this is that if all the cores are slammed, it sticks with the more stable 3.6, but if it's more, less cores being used at once, it actually rotates through. And the polling rate of core temp shows 4 GHz on all the cores because the load's rotating between all of them. I don't know if it's the program or the processor that's doing that. I decided not to do anything with the front side bus though. Left it at its stock 200 because if I raise the FSB frequency I can overclock that way and speed things up. The problem I have with FSB overclocking is that there's a minimum multiplier for power save mode on the motherboard, which is 4. So that's why this thing won't go below 800 megahertz. If I up the frequency on the front side bus, if I run at a faster frequency, I will go up to like 900 megahertz minimum speed and stuff and take out the bottom of the performance thing, the bottom of the performance curve for when nothing exciting is going on the computer and waste power that way. And of course generate extra heat, the fans spin a little faster, and that's the thing. Desktops, especially this 5-year-old beast, are absolute losers when it comes to efficiency. For the basics that don't require a lot of horsepower, the turd Shiba does with 10 watts what this thing does with 80 to 100. It's horrible. And that's including the screen. Not counting this television, which I've gotten down to the 100-watt mark by turning the backlight all the way down, but it's cold cathode, so it'll never be as efficient as its newer counterparts. Hyper Transport 2.4 should probably drop it down to 2 solid, or put it back on automatic mode, which would probably ramp it down a bit, because Hyper Transport doesn't do very much except possibly mess up the stability if it's too high. I just know that this 2.4 is as high as it's going to go before things start crashing and blue screening, so I basically set it at 2400 and saw how high I could go. The DDR clock is manual, but it is DDR1333, so I'm wondering if a faster speed on the RAM could help with the overclocking as well, or the stability. I mean, this is from 5 years ago, no heat spreaders or nothing, just generic green stick crucial DDR3 1333. We're going up to DDR3 1866. From 8 gigs to 16 gigs, and from 1333 to 1866, going up to the highest officially supported RAM level and the highest officially supported RAM frequency that this motherboard from 2010 will support, and therefore capping out the RAM in the system, which is something I've been doing with systems I've had for long periods of time for a long time. It's something that there will always be a RAM upgrade somewhere along the line. I think I capped out my original HP too. It came with 128 megs of RAM. I capped it at 512 before retiring it over 10 years ago. The net effect of all of this overclocking, though, is that the processor score has gone from 570-ish at stock speeds all the way up to 625, which is the Nova Bench CPU equivalent of an AMD FX 8150. Not necessarily the 8350, but at least into the very bottom of FX territory. So it's not an earth-shattering improvement, certainly not a reason to not buy a better processor. And that's one of the reasons why I've considered overclocking to be a tad overrated over the years. Because it's, yeah, if you can get third-party cooling and get some better processing, cool. But it's usually, unless you really want to be an extremist and burn out your chips in like 2 or 3 years, you really have to pull out the stops and be like, go for nerd street cred in order to get the kind of overclocking results that people have made fun of me for not having over the years. This machine has run totally stable for the last 5+ years, and I'd like to not ruin that, thank you very much, because I can't say the same for OEM systems, either on the home level or on the business level. Folks I know with consumer grade, quote-unquote, consumer grade computers have had problems that I have never seen, and I don't know how to deal with them because I have no experience with them, because my own systems are nice and solid. And likewise with people with business computers that have problems that I don't get to experience because I don't have them with these systems because I build my own. It's just one of those things. People are like, hey, how come you thought you knew? I thought you knew more about computers. I'm like, yeah, well, I don't have as much experience with crappy computers because my computers aren't crappy. Not like, say, Dell Optiplexes with those laptop hard drives. Hey, refresh your systems every 2 years or whatever to get more efficiency and more productivity. Yeah, hey Dell, try not putting laptop hard drives inside Core i5 machines. Thank you very much. Now, as far as the Nova Bench profile is concerned, I am eventually going to clean this up and get rid of all but the top scores for each configuration. So Tuxedo's current record is 1382 for Windows 7 Professional with the hardware that it has right now, but no overclocking. One of the problems I've run into since going to Windows 10 is that graphics card scores are actually lower, even with the exact same graphics card. I mean, in Windows 7 I got 630 on this. Now, Windows 10 is not as resource hungry as 7 was. It takes some lessons from 8. So I think there's probably something with Nova Bench that is causing the graphics tests to drop by 100 points. Or it's an efficiency thing, slowing down the GPU when it's not being used. And Nova Bench's graphics processor segment. Oh, cool, thanks, Glary. I have 3 programs that I can update. Whoop-de-freaking do. Whatever. But, Nova Bench's graphics segment is a little 800 by 600 thing with anti-aliasing and shaders. It's not anything that today's graphics cards are really going to have to struggle with. So I think it might be an issue with the Nova Bench program that it triggers like power saving features because it doesn't have a robust enough graphics thing. Anyways, 1382 is the record. I don't know if I'll be able to beat that because of these Windows 10 issues, but the processor back then had factory overclocks only, and the stock cooler, pathetic stock cooler, was 570. Now I'm into the low 6s with that, so... Anyways, I suppose I could try another benchmark too, like that Monster Hunter benchmark. Why don't we do that with this current setup one last time before we shut everything down? Okay, house lights are turned way down for the Monster Hunter Online benchmark. I don't know if I've ever actually run this in any previous videos. I know I've run it before, but I don't know if it's been on camera before. But this is basically a relatively recent game. It looks kind of neat. Achieved with CryEngine. It basically, unlike Nova Bench, it does give you some numbers. It gives you a number at the end, which is good, but basically, this is more of an assault on one's graphics card than Nova Bench is with its 800 by 600 something or another. It's opening in windowed mode, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the resolution to 1080p. We're going to bump everything up to... we're going to change... And by the way, this theme at this screen with this T-Rex type thing kind of reminds me of the Superman theme. What we're going to do, though, we're going to do hunting mode, bring everything up to 1080p, because I want to smash the heck out of this system. Leave everything else at default settings. Yeah, that's kind of similar to the Superman theme, don't you? Anyways. Yeah, full screen 1080, every other setting just left as is. Let's go. And we're only running one light, and ooh, watch the camera strap. I don't think I've ever actually shown this on the on any video. I might be wrong. We might be talking like 2014 or something, but I think I saw some people like Review Tech USA running really souped up systems through these and getting really big scores. But the big thing that I'm looking for, yeah, I'm only running one light. Those lights are getting moved, by the way. I'm sick and tired of them being like 2 dots on the screen every time I want to do this camcorder Let's Play stuff. But yeah, it's kind of got an element of like overseas MMO dash graphics going every which way, and it even kind of turns into something resembling Jurassic Park towards the end of the sequence, with some dinosaur-like creatures tearing each other up. Anyways, to keep this from being, 2 playthroughs of this, we're just going to skip straight to the end when the score comes up. Yeah, it's kind of choppy. I ran this one just to make sure it would run without crashing, and basically, this is basically cements Tuxedo as a 1080-30 system. A benchmark 65 million years in the making. Welcome to Jurassic Mark. Okay, that was just terrible.
Epic.
Okay, we've reached the underground sequence, which leads to something resembling the start of a Final Fantasy boss fight, which means we're getting towards the end of this. So, what we're going to do, we're going to take these numbers with this overclock going, then set everything back to factory in the BIOS, and compare this to the factory overclocks to see if the risks to stability and chip life are really worth it when it comes to this machine, or should I just bite the bullet and actually get a newer processor, which not only would have better clock speeds and better performance, but it would also have better architecture, support for newer code sets, and all kinds of other stuff. Sometimes, with this sort of thing, 7497 for the final score, sometimes, with this sort of thing, I get to thinking that overclocking is like a continuation of the megahertz myth. People go around bragging about, oh yeah, I got a 3.2 gigahertz chip and I'm running it at 4.5. And, but yeah, okay, so you're seduced by numbers like that. But what exactly is the real world impact? We're about to find out. This is 7497. The frame range was average of 34, minimum 17.5 with this setup. Now, let's go back to factory overclocks only by setting the motherboard back to auto and try this again. There we go. Auto. Everything's back to factory overclocks only, although I think restarting the computer will adjust some of these Northbridge and hypertransport frequencies. 3.2 standard speed, 2.4 for the Northbridge, 3.6 for turbo, 2200 actually for the hypertransport, so it dropped it down when I set it back to auto. And everything's on automatic, so we're back to factory supported stuff only. Let's see what kind of a difference it makes. We're back, this time with stock clocks, or should I say factory overclocks only. Roughly 7500 is the target score. How much will it drop now that we're only doing what the motherboard says we can do? We're kissing ass here, specifically gigabytes. Everything else is normal the way it normally is. I just switch it over to 1080 full screen. Let the benchmark begin, darn it. Almost the end of the sequence again, this time with factory overclocks only. This is the stuff that you can turn on in the motherboard BIOS, but still can leave everything on automatic mode. Since there was a restart after this, some of those numbers might have changed, but basically, if you go auto, this is the result that you get. Come on, Scorpion, let's get this boss fight here, and then let's see. The target score is around 7500. How much lower is it going to be? Significant, or maybe something where, well, I could still play like this, that's the thing. And actually the point. When do these performance gains cross the line from being synthetic numbers? Yeah, see, 7544, same range. So obviously the graphics card was more of a factor here. This was obviously stressing the graphics card more. Again, in the 30s for the average, with a minimum of 18 actually. Interesting how that works. Isn't that a little higher than last time? Actually, all these scores are higher than last time. Funny how that works, because it has the same settings. We're just going by what the motherboard, we just have everything on automatic mode instead of trying to manually override stuff. So, maybe what I should do is find a benchmark somewhere that taxes the CPU and GPU equally, but comes up with a number at the end to compare this to. Interesting.